Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make several different cookies that we have kind of in my Christmas cookie like sampler that I like to do every year. And then we'll make a grilled cheese using some bougie cheese and some ham on our homemade sourdough. So for the first cookie base that we're going to start, we're going to essentially, I'll go through real quick. We're going to make oatmeal cookies. Then we're going to do a chocolate chip cookie dough, but we're actually going to split the dough and we'll do half chocolate chip, half white chocolate macadamia nut because I have the same base for those cookies. And then we're going to make butter dreams and sparkling molasses cookies. So we've got a good collection of cookies that we're baking up. We're going to only bake one at lunch because the rest of the dough that needs to chill. But the nice thing is you don't have to bake them all up at one time. You can bake up half the batch and then a couple days later bake up the dough again. So it kind of makes it nice. But let's start with our oatmeal. So I do have my stack of butter and we are going to go through all of this butter for our cookies today. So for oatmeal, we are going to start out with 2.5 sticks of butter. Now this makes a lot of oatmeal cookies, but you need it because those oats and all that stuff on there. So we've got 2.5 sticks of butter, which is nice because one of my recipes only uses 1.5 sticks, so it kind of works out perfectly. So let's cut this guy in half. And we'll slowly watch our mountain of butter disappear. It's when you know you're going to have a good Christmas. And then I'm just going to give a quick cream of it. And you want to make sure you use room temperature butter so that it creams your sugars and everything cream into it really well so you don't have to do it for as long. Okay, we are going to do our brown sugar here. So we are going to add in 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar, and we're going to use light brown sugar. So I'm going to pack it in. So this is a 1/2 cup. And then I need just a little bit more to make 3/4. And then we are going to use a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. Let me grab this. And then we'll cream our sugars into our butter for our base. Just let me get it. There we go. And then we'll cream these in. I'm going to grab a spatula to push that butter down real quickly and get it in here. It's funny because it's kind of like, you know, a little bit cooler in our house because it's kind of a cooler day. My room temperature butter is a little bit firmer than it normally is because my house isn't as warm. In the summer, my butter is so soft. It creams so wonderfully. Okay, let's get this creamed in there. And we'll mix it up. You want to make sure you get that sugar all the way mixed in there. Otherwise, it won't incorporate well into your cookies. So room temperature is always what you want. Okay, we're just about there. We're just going to push down the sides, but you can see how we have just a nice kind of sugary paste here. I'm just going to push down, make sure I don't have any little bits stuck on either side of my bowl.
You got a question? What type of cookies are you making today?
So we are going to be making oatmeal, just plain oatmeal, no oatmeal raisin, but oatmeal, and then chocolate chip, white chocolate macadamia nut, butter dreams, and sparkling molasses cookies. So a good set of our sampler. Okay, I think we've got our butter mixed in here well. And now we are going to add in 1 egg. And a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then I'm going to get a paper towel so that I can just wipe the vanilla out because we're going to be using our teaspoon a lot today. go. And we're going to add in a teaspoon of baking soda. And a teaspoon of salt. And we'll cream this in, and then we'll add in our spices for our next part. But let's get this mixed in there well. So we're going to make sure that egg and that vanilla gets creamed in. And then what you want to do, if you've noticed in here, when it creams, sometimes you get like the mixture on the bottom. That's why you really want to make sure you use your spatula to press down on the side so that it all gets incorporated really, really well into our base. Because you want your cookies to turn out perfectly. And if they are missed, like if you just kind of try to breeze through it, it just won't mix up well. There we go. Perfect. So we've got those mixed in. Now our spices for my oatmeal cookies, and these are just my basic recipes. Sometimes I'll throw in some more spices to make them things, but we're going to use a teaspoon of cinnamon and a fourth a teaspoon of nutmeg.
You have a question? Are the kids excited for Christmas?
Oh, yes. They are very excited for Christmas. I feel like, we have like 20 advent calendars in the house. We have so many Christmas countdown calendars. So because they truly love it. But yes, they're very excited. They're sneaking around to try to find where presents are, trying to figure out what they're getting. And then, we have our house decorated from, head to toe. So actually, I've got to do a little walkthrough so I can show you guys how crazy we are with decorating Christmas, because I am like the person who believes more when it comes to decorations. You can never have too much. I'm not one of those minimalists when it comes, there's no part of me that's a minimalist. I like decorations and stuff like that. Okay, we're going to put in a fourth of a teaspoon of nutmeg. And you don't want to go too powerful on it. Nutmeg has a strong flavor, but that I find is the missing ingredient in most oatmeal cookies. Got to have it. Okay, we've got our cinnamon and our nutmeg. Let's cream those in real quick. And then I'm just going to use my spatula again, push down on the sides. And then we'll add in our flour and our oats, and we'll be ready to start baking these up. And then we can work on all of our other doughs, which are doughs that need to be chilled before you bake. So it's one of those things that at least makes the division of the prep a little bit easier. Okay. So let's get in our flour and our oats. Okay, we're going to do our flour first, and we are going to add in. Okay, let me slide over here. So we're going to add in a cup and a half of flour. Make sure you give it a little shake. You don't want any air pockets in there. So 1.5 cups of flour. And you don't add most cookie bases. I'll be around 2 cups or 2 1/4. But we are going to be adding in oats. So you want to have a wetter base to add in the oats so that your cookies are like just perfect. So there's 1.5 cups of flour. Slide this guy over here. We'll mix them in. I always mix it in, and then I mix in the oats. Here. Perfect. And then we're going to, again, scrape it down. And that is going to be the key to making sure your ingredients get mixed in well, is just to constantly scrape down the batter in your bowl or the dough in your bowl, so that you have a good, evenly mixed base. Because you don't want to have to over mix it, because that can mess with your texture of your cookies, but just making sure that you've scraped down between each process so that every ingredient gets mixed in. Okay. So now we can add in our oats as soon as I get some of this extra dough off of there. And then we're going to add in 3 cups of oats. You want to use old-fashioned oats. You can use quick oats. They're just slightly different texture. Don't use a steel cut oat. Those will be hard and crunchy, but good old fashioned is what you want to use, is my preferred. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, and 3. And now I can at least move one of my ingredients off this list, or off this section, since we're no more oats. Let's mix these in. And the oats are gonna make it hold together really well, which makes it also to where you can bake these right away. They don't need to chill because they absorb any extra liquid. Okay, I'm gonna take my spatula and push it down. So again, all of these oats get mixed in here well. And just, there we go. And I just like to make sure, because sometimes with like a stand mixer, your base of it can get, oats can sit down there, and you want it to make sure it gets mixed in all the way. Okay. Looks like we have our oatmeal cookies ready. And then, since we're going to be using this paddle mixer for our chocolate chip cookies, I'm going to try to scrape it clean as much as possible. I do have 2 bowls, so that makes making like lots of cookies at one time a lot easier. But since the cookies have essentially the same ingredients in them, you don't even have to wash your paddle here. Just scrape it as much as possibly clean in there, so you're not bringing any oats or anything in there. But it doesn't need a full scrub down. There we go. Although if my kids were here, this would be their job, the taste tester job. It's a very important job, they say. Okay. And now I'm just going to use my paddle, my spatula here, and just scrape around and really try to mix any little bits together, so you have, again, one cohesive mixture for our cookies. And you see how it's such a nice thick dough? You don't need to chill this one. Okay. Let me grab our sheet here. Slide that over there. And we can start rolling out our first batch so that these can start baking up in our oven. And now with these cookies, you just grab a little ball like this, and you can just place them on here. You can chill this dough. You just, when you go to bake it, you want it to sit out for just a little bit before you go to bake it, because those oats kind of absorb some of that mixed, that like liquidy part of the cookie. And so you don't want them too cold, or you're just going to have these little like stumps. You want them to spread out a little bit. And we'll get these going, and then we'll bake them up. If you wanted to add in, say, raisins or chocolate chips, you would just mix them in right now before you bake them up. But I am just love a good old plain oatmeal cookie with nothing else added to it. It's just my favorite. But it's one of those things you just never find plain oatmeal cookies anywhere. They always have raisins or craisins or something in it. But I think they're just so good on their own. And my kids like that too, because none of my kids really like raisins. They'll accept the yogurt covered raisins, those. They love those. But a plain raisin, nobody really likes those. But I feel like that was like the go-to snack when I was a kid. It was always raisins. Everybody always was raisins and goldfish, because it came out when I was a kid, goldfish, and they were really popular, and that was a snack we always had.
So they came out?
I feel, well, maybe I was like a teenager, and that was the thing, but I remember goldfish.
I want to say 70s.
Oh, they could have been out, but they were like popularized big. I mean,
you did this with Wheat Thins.
I did this with Wheat Thins too. You're right. I did do it with Wheat Thins. It's just, you know what? I have like this memory, and it was kind of like when I was a kid, we moved from Iowa to Tennessee when I was 10 years old. And if something came out like, I don't know if I was just exposed to it in Tennessee or whatnot, and I never had it in Iowa before, but to me, I'm like, oh, it came out when I was a kid, if I remember it here in Tennessee. But it could have existed before, and we just had never had it in Iowa. But I really feel like it came out when I was like, like a tween. So we'll see. He's fact checking mine. He's got to make sure on there. There we go. We're going to get these. And you always want to give your cookies about an inch or so between them to bake up, just in case they spread out. You don't want them to. 1962 was just like yesterday. They were just probably not mainstream, or they were rebranded in there, because I do not remember having goldfish before I was like.
You don't remember having goldfish in the 60s.
I know, I don't remember them in the 60s at all. Let me wash my hands. We're a little messy. But it could have been invented, and then they were just a local delicacy, and then yeah. I tried, guys. I tried. I just don't remember having them before moving to Tennessee. So maybe just they didn't have them where I lived before, which was a bigger town. It was a college town. Okay, let's get these guys in the oven. These bake at 375 for about 8 minutes. You do not want to over bake them. You might think they're underdone. They're not underdone. They will continue to cook on your baking sheet, but don't over bake them. Nobody wants an over baked cookie. Slide these in here. I'm gonna move that. There we go. 8 minutes. Voila. Okay, while we're waiting for those to bake up, let's do our chocolate chip and macadamia nut. So like I said, we are going to be using the same base on this, and then before we add in the chocolate chips at the very end, I'm going to divide the dough in half, and half will be macadamia nuts and white chocolate chips. Actually, I'm doing Christmas chips because it's Christmas and you just need to. And these, I feel like I just made chocolate chip cookies because I did. My daughter wanted them for her math, to give to her friends at school for her math exam. So I made a huge batch of them. So I'm hoping everybody liked them, because she did not bring any back. And I made like 40 of them. Okay. So again, you can just wipe it clean, because this dough is essentially the same base as the other one. In there, so you're not going to get like a flavor bleed over or whatnot. And it just makes a little bit easier when you're prepping up. Okay, we're going to do 2 sticks of butter, so 1 cup of butter, and always use salted butter. Otherwise, your cookies are just going to feel a little bland. Actually, they're going to have just an off flavor to them. Salt is really important in baking. Let's give it a quick cream. There we go. And then for this, we are going to do equal parts brown sugar and regular sugar. So we are going to do 3/4 of a cup of our granulated and 3/4 of brown. Get a little bit. There we go. So 3/4 and 3/4. And these are the two that I'm using my paddle or my stand mixer on. The other one I'm going to use my hand mixer for, because they're just a little bit easier to work with. So there's half a cup, and now we need a little bit more to make our 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. And again, you want to use light brown sugar, because dark brown sugar will bring too much of a molasses flavor into it, and it will kind of just mess with those flavors. Let's cream those together. Wash my hands since I've got a little bit of brown sugar on them. Okay, I'm going to grab my spatula here and push down the butter. Spatula number 2. And then it will be like the other day, I'm like, where's all my spatulas? I made cookies and they're all in the dishwasher. It's always one of those things, well, why do you have so many of one thing? Because there's one time a year that I'm going to use 10 of them and so I need that many. Okay. Let's cream our butter in again. Room temperature butter creams better than cold butter. There we go. And I find that cold butter will stick to your bowl more. So room temperature is where you got to go. So I always make sure I just set out the night before whenever I'm going to, do it. Just set your packs of butter out on the counter. That way you don't have to try to remember to get them out because it takes a while for butter to get to room temperature. Okay. The butter looks like it's creamed in there nicely. This recipe, we're going to use 2 eggs. We'll crack those in there.
And which cookies are these?
So this is going to be my chocolate chip and my white chocolate macadamia nut cookies. So we're going to take this base and we'll split it between 2. And that way we'll have smaller batches of them, but more variety. But they are cookies that have the exact same base in them. We are going to use a whole tablespoon of vanilla extract in this one. It gives it a really great flavor base for our cookies. And then we're going to do a teaspoon of baking soda and a teaspoon of salt. So, got the salt. If you have unsalted butter, add about a half a teaspoon more for this because you're gonna want that flavor pop in there. And then a teaspoon of baking soda. And we're going to cream these together. There we go. And I'm just going to take my spatula and again, just make sure I have none of the butter or the sugar, whatnot stuck on the side of my pan. There we go.
And question, do the eggs need to be room temperature as well?
That one doesn't matter so much in this recipe because we are going to be chilling this dough, so everything will be cold again. So they can be room temperature, they can also be cold. It doesn't play a factor in it. Okay. There we go. So we've got our creamed in our sugar and basting. Now we are going to add in our flour and we're going to add in 2 1/4 cups of flour. So 1, 2, and then a 1/4 cup more. There we go. We'll mix that in there, and then this is where I will divide the dough into 2 different bowls to add in our mix-ins. And so the base of this cookie uses more flour in it than the base of an oatmeal because those oats in the oatmeal will help absorb that extra moisture out. So you want to make sure you don't put too little in here or your cookie will be too runny. And if you add too much flour, then your cookie will be really dense. There we go. Looks like I'm going to just brush it down with my spatula here and then we'll mix it one more time. And make sure if you're using a stand mixer to get in between the paddles because sometimes you can get like a chunk of butter or something that like sits in there and doesn't mix. Okay. Do one quick little mix between this. Beautiful. And now I'll slide this out. We're going to divide this between our 2 bowls and we'll mix in our things. And it's a great way, again, to give you a variety of your cookies without having to make 2 full batches or to do separate work. This base is very, very, it works for both cookies. So let's get our bowls here. And this is a dough that you have to chill. Chilling these is going to prevent your cookies from running and prevent them, like just makes them really chewy instead of a crispy or crunchy cookie. Okay, our oatmeal cookies, our first batch here is ready. So we're going to take this guy out. And we cooked at 375 for 8 minutes. And look at our gorgeous oatmeal cookies. Again, you might think, oh, they look like they need more. They do not need more. You can see right around the edges, they've got this nice kiss of light brown. And they will sit on your baking sheet for about 5 minutes before you transfer them. The residual heat of your baking will continue to cook it. But these are going to leave you with an oatmeal cookie that is soft and chewy inside, no crunchy, no crispy, just soft and chewy the way they should be. But they are just so simple, delicious. Again, you could always throw in raisins or chocolate chips or craisins if you wanted that extra flair before baking. But I tend to like just the good old classic, plain and simple. Okay, let's get our dough out of here. We will we'll mix these up. Then we're going to work on our grilled cheese, and then we'll whip up our next 2 cookies while our grilled cheeses are cooking. Here we go. So if you wanted also to do all of one, you could just, you don't have to divide. But I just find this is just a great way to make I would say this makes about 20 cookies of each. So it's a good amount of cookies and variety. There we go. Fairly good. Now my children would be like, oh, you missed some good stuff on here. Because they are the residential bowl and paddle cleaners. Okay, so I'm just going to take our dough here and divide it as evenly as I can between these 2 bowls. But it doesn't have to be an exact science because our mix-ins are just optional. There we go.
You have a question? Do you make cookie boxes?
I don't actually sell any of my food that I make. I make them just for myself or friends. I might make food and cookies and stuff not to give to friends and everything. But I have a big family, so we kind of go through a lot. And I don't normally make this many cookies throughout the year. I'll make cookies a couple times a week, like once or twice a week. But at Christmas time, because it was kind of just something we always did growing up, was we always had just cookies in every flavor imaginable and tins throughout our house. But I'm making these cookies. I'm actually making a little kind of dinner for my friends, like a take and bake dinner for them to have. She has some family coming in town tomorrow. And so I'm actually going to give her half of these kind of cookies to give her a cookie sampler box for that. Okay, let me get a spoon for each one of these to mix them in, although actually I can use the same spoon. So what you're going to want to do to make the mixing just a little bit easier is just kind of press them out.
Could dried cranberries work with this stuff?
You could honestly put any mix-in that you want in here as long as they're not like a super wet mix-in. So you could put nuts in them, cranberries in it. You can kind of change it up. But we're going to do ours kind of, chocolate chip and then white chocolate macadamia nut. But yes, you could add in cranberries. You could add in walnuts, pecans. You can even change it up, do like your maple chips or butterscotch chips if you wanted to. Okay, these are our good old, they're essentially white chocolate, all of them. But we're going to mix in, you don't need a full bag. You need just about a half a bag of this in for the cookie. So save some for another day. And then I have some macadamia halves and pieces. And you want to make sure they're not salted because the salted ones can just make it kind of a little bit different flavored in there. So these are just the unsalted flavored because you want that sweetness with it. So that one's about to, I think I'm going to add, you know what? I have 2 bags. I might add a little bit more on here because I just Nothing is worse when you get like macadamia nut cookies and you get like 1 nut per cookie. I need a couple of nuts in each cookie. So I'm going to add in here, and then we're going to go mix this in. And honestly, it might be easier. I'll try it with my spoon, but I might have to just go in there with my hands to mix it. The dough should have a slight tack now, but once you chill it, it will be easy enough for you to roll into balls and then bake up. That's how you're going to get a nice kind of shape on your cookie too, on here. There we go. So we'll mix that up. There. And kind of clean it out, get kind of coated. And then our next one, we'll do our chocolate chips. But I find that the little Christmas chips are just fun little touch because they're all, essentially like a white chocolate that has been dyed, or a melting chip that are very similar in flavor. But it works well for this. Okay. It is just going to be easier for me to just do it with my hands and mix it in there better, which is, you're going to essentially use your hands anyways when you roll them out, but you want to make sure it gets evenly dispersed because you don't want pockets where you have too many nuts and chocolate chips in it, because then it won't bake up right. And the same thing, if you have too little, it won't bake up right. But ideally, is you're aiming for a full batch about 2 to 2.5 cups of chips or mix-ins. For a half batch like this, you want about a cup of each or so. There we go. Now you can kind of see it's all mixed in nicely. Okay, get all of that. And then, oh, look at that little Christmas chip over here. And then for this, we're going to mix in about a cup or so of chocolate chips. So a regular size of chocolate chips has about 2.5 cups in it. So you can go between a cup and a half, like a fourth for a half one, or 2.5 cups for a full one. It should be a little bit more to get me there. And then we'll mix this in. And then you just need to let this dough chill for about 2 hours before baking, but it can also sit overnight, or you can keep it in your fridge for a couple of days and bake it up for another time. If you want to, you can shape into, after it's chilled for a little bit, you can shape into balls and then pop into your freezer, so that when you want to, if you always just want cookies on hand, you can have them in your freezer. You take them out, you just let them sit at room temperature for about 20-30 minutes before you bake. That will get them kind of back to a cold form, and then you can bake them up. But here we've got our cookie or chocolate chips mixing in. There we go. And I'm like the one where you've got to have a good amount of chocolate chips on it. I don't want it too minimal in it. If you want to add a little, like change it up, you can chop up a cookie bar, or chocolate bar, and add them in there for chunks. Or you could do a mixture of chocolate chips and mini chocolate chips.
Do you have to chill this stuff?
Yes, you do. You need to chill it for a minimum of 2 hours. That way it can chill all the way through, and then you can roll it out and bake it up. So here are our 2 doughs. So we're going to be chilling this, and then I'm going to be baking it up tonight at, either at dinner or later tonight. Get my hands washed. So for this, all you're going to do is you're going to cover it with either a little bit of, saran wrap or press and seal, and pop it in your fridge and let it chill till later. So look at that. We've already got like 3 cookies down already.
Could you use brown butter for this?
So brown butter, yes, but that's going to add quite a bit of time to it, because you'll need to brown your butter, and then you're going to need to let it cool all the way. And actually, if you kind of pop it in the fridge till it kind of solidifies up again, you can do it and it will work well. But you just need to make sure it becomes completely chilled or cool before you mix it and cream it back into your sugars, because otherwise it will make your cookies too crispy. but brown butter is delicious. I have a couple good brown butter cookies to make, but it's one of those things where it does add like an extra 2 hours to your cooking time because you got to, brown it, which can take like 20 minutes, and then chill it. Okay, we've got some leftover sourdough from the other day, and we're going to turn this into some ham and cheese sandwiches. And I've got actually two. We've got our little cheese box. So we've got some honey sriracha Gouda and then some smoked provolone, which we'll have with ham.
So back to the cookies, how long do those need to bake?
So those bake at 375 for about 8 minutes. Then they just get the perfect little touch of brownness on them. They spread out a little bit, but it's why you need to have them chilled. But because otherwise, if you try to bake them out at 375, they will run out and they will get crispy around the edges. Okay, I'm going to cut my sourdough kind of on the sides like this so that I can make a bunch of half sandwiches. Here we go. For a lunch today, kind of simple lunch because I have a feeling kids are going to be wanting some cookie dough. Already missing a cookie. Is it too hot? No, perfect. It's already cool. They're already our first batch of cookies are missing. Okay, looks like I can we'll save this because those would not fit together well. Got 3 good sandwiches coming out of this, which is perfect because that's all I actually kind of needed. Okay, we're going to put a little bit of butter on one side of each slice of bread. And then, this one's kind of a mountainside, so I'm going to flip it over. Let's see. That will work. Now I'm interested. So I kind of remember this honey sriracha cheese from last year. So for my husband's birthday, I got him this like mystery cheese sampler. And so there's some crazy ones. I was deciding between whether using this honey sriracha, and I thought it went real well with the ham, or the Diablo cheese. But I remember the Diablo one from last year was so spicy. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to put on there because my kids will all want to bite and they will be very, very sad. I just remember last year I could not handle the Diablo and I thought this one was spicy too. But it's just a fun way to make your charcuteries and your cheese boards a little bit more fun. And both of these, smoked provolone and the honey sriracha, I think will both pair well with the ham. Okay, let's open these guys up. It's so funny. So like last year, I actually ordered them from the store, but now I found them on Amazon and you can order them, get them there. I'm like, I feel like you can buy everything on Amazon nowadays. I always tell my kids if they need something, I'm like, if you can find it on Amazon, let me do it. It's easier that way. Okay. Get this open on here. And then apparently I cannot open this cheese. There we go. But we're going to slice it up and we'll kind of put a layer on top and the bottom, and then we'll sandwich our ham in the middle of the cheese. Okay. So for me, I'm going to have the smoked provolone because I love provolone cheese and I can't handle spicy food. So we're going to put our base layer of our provolone on here. Do the cheese tax to the cameraman. I'm going to have to try it too. Really good. It's got that nice smoked, almost tastes like a smoked Gouda, but a nice smoky flavor to it, which I think works really well with provolone because I find provolone's a pretty bland cheese. But in here, it has actually a lot of flavor. We're going to put our ham in there. I think 2 slices should be good. And then we're going to do a second layer of our smoked provolone on the top. And then I might do one half and half with the cheeses. There we go. This one I have a feeling my oldest daughter is going to want. She's going to walk by and she's going to be like, I want this one. Okay, moment of truth. I'm going to put it on here. We're going to give it a taste, see if my husband can handle it. A whole sandwich with it. I'm going to try the smallest piece of it. Is it too spicy for me?
No.
No, it's got like a little bit of heat to it, but it's not super spicy. But it has that nice flavoring. I think it's going to go well with the ham. So we're going to add in our slices of our cheese right here. And then, since this is going to be his sandwich, we will make sure there's copious amounts of ham on here. Need a fourth slice?
Of course.
Of course. Okay. And then we'll put our cheese. Whoo, I'm getting some heat now. It's like in the back of my throat. It's definitely a burn there. Oh, might have to. That's hot, spicy. 1 second. Where's my drink? There it is. See, it didn't have an initial burn, but it definitely has it now. I think the last one, I'll save this for his own personal charcuteries. We'll do just a regular smoked provolone on the other one. So just kind of like a play on like a ham and Swiss cheese, because provolone and Gouda are more similar to Swiss than they are to a cheddar. But I think these flavors pair well with like a nice sweetness of the ham. Slide that on there and we'll get these cooking, and then we'll work on our next batch of cookies. And our next, I'm trying to decide. We're going to make, I think we'll do the butter dream. We'll do the sparkling molasses next, and then we'll do the butter dreams. Now, the butter dreams, you make the base dough, but what makes them, I guess the dream part of it is after the dough is chilled, you roll it into a ball, you push it down, and then you push a half of a maraschino cherry in it. And then you bake them up. And they're like a shortbread with a maraschino cherry, which adds a little more sweetness to them because the dough is it's like a traditional shortbread, so not super sweet, but they are delicious. And they kind of remind me of like a little Rudolph nose. Okay, let's get this cooking up. I'll wash my hands, and then we'll start working on our next batch of cookies. Okay. We've got our bowl, and we're going to do our sparkling molasses. So I'm actually going to use my hand mixers for this one, because this one is easy enough to work with. And for this, we are going to use 1.5 sticks of butter. So we're down to just 2 sticks. I told you we're going to get through that mountain of butter. So 1.5 sticks of butter. I'll throw this away. And then we're going to add in a cup of sugar. And then we'll add in molasses for our next part of the kind of the sugary part for it. So, but we'll first kind of cream our sugar into our butter. Okay. And again, make sure your butter is room temperature so that it will cream in nicely. Otherwise, you'll be here for days trying to make sure the butter creams.
What's your plan for Christmas dinner?
So Christmas dinner, I do the Swedish smorgasbord. So I'll do a Yule board, which is kind of like a multi-course meal. It's pretty fabulous if you've grown up on it. People are like, what? Pickled herring 3 ways? And I'm like, of course. But it's kind of a multi-course meal, which will have Swedish meatballs, ham, Janssen's temptation, which is a potato dish, mashed rutabaga on there. And then I'll make a couple different breads. And then you also have like a cheese course, a cold meats course, a cold seafood course. And then Christmas Eve, we kind of do more of an American one. And I do a prime rib roast with mashed potatoes, gravy, Brussels sprouts, and bacon, caramelized carrots and onions. And I'll probably do my sourdough rolls with that dinner. So we kind of had the same meals every single year for our like Christmas Eve and Christmas. But our Yule board, it's kind of just a tradition, so we always have it the way it is. We're going to add in 1/4 cup of molasses. And I swear this has been the same jar of molasses bottle since I was a kid. It's always grandma's molasses. And it's the same jar. I swear it hasn't changed. But I think this is probably like the only time of year people use molasses is to make like either gingerbread or a sparkling molasses cookie. Grab out a small spatula because this runs very, very slow. I once had a friend growing up who had a sheepdog who was very, very slow, and very fitting, the dog's name was Molasses. Here we go. So we've got 1/4 cup of our molasses in here. And this is going to give the sparkling molasses cookie their nice brown color to them. So we'll cream that in. There we go. Looking beautiful. So we'll just mix it until all that butter is really mixed well in there. Because again, you don't want to have any little butter like pebbles or whatnot. Okay. That should be good. We're going to use 1 egg in here. Crack that up. There we go. And then for our spices, this one's going to use cinnamon, ginger, and I think just cinnamon and ginger. We'll add this in here. Okay. We're going to add in a teaspoon of cinnamon. Here we go. 1/2 teaspoon of ginger. And you know what? Actually, I do add in nutmeg for this. So 1/2 nope, it's not nutmeg. I was like, it's not nutmeg, it's allspice. 1/2 teaspoon of ginger and 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. So let me go grab my allspice because I was like, wait a second, I know it's not nutmeg. Perfect. So 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. It's hard. I'm trying to remember all my recipes here. Nutmeg is in the oatmeal cookies. 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon of salt. And then before we mix this, I'm just going to check on my sandwiches because I can start to hear the butter kind of like crisp up. So I want to make sure they're cooking up nicely. We're going to do our first flip. I always cook my sandwiches twice on each side. The first one is kind of to heat the bread up and melt it and allow it to kind of come together. And then the second time on each side is to crisp it up and give it its nice kind of golden brown crispy edge. And we're going to add in 1.5 teaspoons of baking soda. So I'm just going to use my 1/2 teaspoon 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. Let's cream this in. Get our spices mixed in here. Those cinnamon and the allspice and ginger will give it a nice kind of coloring to it as well. There we go. Mix that here. Perfect. And then we'll add in 2 cups of flour.
I have a question. What's the difference between baking soda and baking powder?
So baking soda does not have a reactive agent added into it, and has a stronger mix to it. Baking powder is a complete leavening agent, meaning that it has baking soda in it as well as some sort of, citric acid or something that will react with the baking soda to give you your puff on its own. And then typically like a base, like a cornstarch or whatnot to fill it out. So it's weaker than a baking soda, but it can be used on its own. Baking soda needs to have another ingredient in your cooking so that it reacts with it.
Also, they're spelled differently.
Well, they are spelled differently. That would be my husband's answer. That was sugar. I need flour here. So we're going to add in 2 cups of flour. Here we go. So 1 and 2. And we'll mix this together. This is a dough that you do need to chill as well. And then before you bake them, you roll them into balls and then you roll them through sugar. That gives them that sparkling look on them when they bake up. But we'll cream our butter in here, or our flour into our mixture here. And then I'll use a spatula to kind of combine it all together at the end, because when you use a hand mixer, you get more of a crumbly base for it. But once we get in here and stir it together, it will form up into your dough. There we go. Perfect. So let me shake these out. We will be using these for our butter dreams, but I'm going to give them a quick wash. And so now I'm just going to kind of go through with my hands, you do with a spoon too, and just kind of bring your dough together. But you see how it has a little bit of tack. That's why you need to chill your dough, and then it also prevents your cookies from running when you chill it. So we'll chill this dough again about 2 hours minimum, and then it should be chilled all the way through.
Are these cookies chewy or crispy?
These are chewy cookies, and so they'll spread out a little bit. But what you'll do is you'll take a small ball like this, and then you're going to roll it through sugar, and then you'll bake it at 350 for about 8.5 minutes or so. You'll take them out, and then you'll sit there and like, are they done? They're done. And you let them cool for about 5 minutes on your tray, and then they'll be ready to serve. But they have that almost like a ginger snap kind of cookie taste to it. Okay, let me slide this real quick. I'm gonna wash my hands on here. Let's see how. Hopefully it didn't get too toasted. That one did, but guess what? Just the one. It was probably more over the burner. That one, luckily, is my husband's. On there. Let me turn it down. I must have knocked it just a smidge there, but we'll keep this more to the south on it for it. Okay. And luckily not too bad. Let's bring it down here. We're going to get that nice crisp up on each side. We've got our sparkling molasses. This dough needs to chill. Before you bake it, you'll roll it in balls, and you'll roll it through about a 1/2 cup of sugar for the whole thing. So they get coated in the sugar, and then you place them about a 1 inch apart on your baking pan. Bake at 350 for about 8.5 minutes. Last dough, and then we are ready. Let me wash my paddles here real quick. This dough is really, really simple because it's a shortbread, which means it has no egg in it or leavening agent. It's more of a dense cookie, but we'll push a little maraschino cherry in it, and it adds just the perfect amount of sweetness and flavor to it. There we go. We're going to start with 2 sticks of butter. And this is also a dough you need to chill. Lots of my cookies are chill, but the chill of the dough gives you cookies that are nice and chewy and not crispy, and they don't dry out as well. They're just the perfect cookie. And this one has hardly any sugar in it because, again, it's like a shortbread. So we are going to add in a 1/2 cup of sugar. And what gives these a little bit more sweetness at the end is the maraschino cherry. You cut a maraschino cherry in half, and you'll add it in there. Let's see it. Let's check on our grilled cheeses here. These are just about done. Look how beautiful. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my skillet. We'll let the residual heat continue to cook them up and melt the rest of that cheese, but it's pretty much there. Let's get this whipped up. So we've got a 1/2 cup of sugar in here with our 2 sticks or a cup of room temperature butter. There we go. And again, room temperature butter is going to allow you to cream this much better than you would with a like cold butter. You can also do this with a stand mixer if you want. I just find it's not a very big batch of cookie dough. So sometimes if you have the big, like I have the big stand mixer, which is like 1.5 size the regular one, it takes a little bit more for it. Okay, we are going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm going to just clean this off so I don't get any cinnamon flavor in there. So a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then we'll just have to add in our flour, and that's the base for it. So I told you this is a very, very simple cookie. So our vanilla, we'll cream that in there, and then we'll add in our flour. There we go. Get this mix in here. And these, they're such a great cookie. They're my husband's actual favorite cookie, but they're very much like a holiday cookie because I don't know, the maraschino cherries just makes me feel like they scream Christmas on them, but they're so good because they're a cookie that you can indulge in and you don't feel like they're super sweet, but they're wonderful.
You're eating fruit.
Yes, as my husband says, you're eating fruit because they have cherries on them. Cherries that exist like that in their natural form. Okay, we're going to add in 2 cups of flour. And this is a really thick dough, but it is so delicious. So it's essentially you're making a shortbread and then you push a cherry on top. So let's cream this in here. Here we go. I'm going to first take my knife and press this butter out because it wants to stay in those paddles. I took my paddle out with it. There we go. Okay. And then we're going to mix this. This is going to be a crumbly dough that you essentially are going to mold in together into a ball to make our cookies. But we'll cream it together, make sure that butter kind of gets cut into it so you don't have any big chunks, and then we'll kind of start shaping it. But it is a crumbler dough, but once you get in there and work with it, it will form together like, like Play-Doh. There we go. Just go a little bit faster, get these last little chunks up in here. And whatever you do, don't add any additional liquid. That will ruin your cookie. So it just needs to be squeezed. A paddle mixer won't cause it to get as crumbly if you do it with a stand mixer, but you can do it with a hand mixer and you just go in with your hands and you clump it all together like this. You see how it's forming into it? And then you let it chill again for about 2 hours minimum. And then that allows the dough to get cold all the way through. And then you roll it into little balls. And I do smaller balls so you get more cherry per thing, but you can do it bigger. But you roll it like this, and then you're going to press it down, and then you put your half of a maraschino cherry on the top of it, and you bake these at 350 for 12 minutes. So these bake longer than the other cookies because they are a shortbread. So there's no leavening agent, there's no eggs or baking powder or baking soda in it. Okay, let me get this finally mixed up, and then we will review kind of our cookies that we made, and then we'll be ready for our lunch here. Okay, let me grab, I've got this one. Let me wash my hands real quick, and I'll grab, because we still have a half a batch of our cookie dough, of our oatmeal. Actually, we still have 2/3 of a batch of our oatmeal cookie. Okay, so we'll slide this here because we've got quite the cookie collection here. So here we baked up our oatmeal cookies, and you see they kind of set out, but they are going to be chewy, delicious oatmeal cookies, not crispy or hard. And here's our batter. This is the dough, you don't have to chill it, But if you do chill it, like you want to save some for later, just let it come to room temperature. We've got our sparkling molasses. With this dough, you're going to roll it into a ball. You're going to roll it in sugar, and then you're going to bake at 350 for 8.5 minutes. We've got our chocolate chip cookie dough, which we will chill. We'll bake for 375 for 8 minutes. Our white chocolate macadamia nut, we have some Christmas chips in there, so it's all kind of the white chocolate that makes them more festive. And again, you bake these at 375 for 8 minutes when they're chilled. And then you have our butter dreams. And what you'll do after they've chilled for about 2 hours, you're going to roll it into a ball. You're going to press your kind of things. You're going to place half of a cherry in there. And then you're going to bake these at 350 for 12 minutes. And we are ready to serve up our grilled cheeses here. Look at this, beautiful. You can see our Gouda has melted on here and it's just delicious. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family. A lot of cookies, or teach you something as well. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to our page and search for what we made, our myriad of cookies, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different baking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my mixer in there. I've got my bowls, my extra bowls, lids, bakingware, HexCloud, everything that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.